Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, he is just about the most regular guest I have on this program, which really does not speak much of him. But he is the best of the best, and he continues to come on this program and humor me by making me think I am important enough to have him. I was thinking about how I could introduce you. The premier local writer for The Athletic, Mike Vorkunov.
The premier. I don't even think I'm the premier New York City writer at all. We have Tim Britton does a pretty good job for us.
Yes, but like
Lindsay Adler.
Yeah, but I pay attention
like
to
if,
how much.
If we're the Avengers, I'm like Hawkeye, who is by far the worst Avenger.
First of all, Hawkeye is not the worst Avenger. I disagree.
Name me a worst Avenger. Go ahead, do it.
Well, are we going by like the technical? Like, is Colby Smulders? Is that her name? Is she a technically?
She's not an Avenger. That's like saying that Nick Fury is an Avenger. He is part of S.H.I.E.L.D. and he oversees the whole thing. But I don't count him as an Avenger. Okay,
he also doesn't have a superpower, so I guess that's fair. I think Captain Marvel is a worse. I mean, she's a more powerful Avenger.
Yeah, she's pretty dope. I mean, the movie wasn't that good, but she's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I purchased Disney Plus in part because I want to see Jeremy Renner run around for 6 episodes and do whatever it is Jeremy Renner's going to do.
He's the worst.
Wow, I'm offended on Jeremy Renner's behalf right now.
That's fine. I mean, you can, we can hash this out later. But I guess if there's one thing we can take away from this podcast, it's that Hawkeye is the worst Avenger.
Okay. Agree to disagree there. I will also agree to disagree with your take of yourself. I pay attention to what The Athletic promotes because I get The Athletic's email every day and there's like the big stories on there and yours are always there. And it's not just because I'm a Knicks fan. I know, you're doing amazing stuff. And you had a piece a couple of days ago that I want to get into. But before we get to that, you have been a journalist for some time. Has there ever been an experience like we've had I'm not just going to say the last week, but like the last week coming off of the previous, whatever it was, 8.5 months.
Last week was very busy, very wild. I don't think I slept very much. I doubt you did as well.
I did.
It was just a very compact period of time. I hope we don't do this again, but I also kind of don't mind just sticking it all in 1 week and getting it over with. As opposed to like the very protracted previous draft free agency schedule. So that really was, the weirdest part for me was just like Friday night when someone started running the Rocky Horror Picture Show, like from my upstairs neighbors. And that just got to be a little too much for me. I was like, okay, I can take the Knicks free agency. I can't take this.
Yeah. Everybody has their limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just weird to go, for me at least, to creating content about nothing for 2/3 of a year to then trying to process like everything at once. That was strange. So we did that. We got to stuff actually happened and stuff did happen. And you wrote.
Did the stuff happen? Did anything like the Knicks had the slowest offseason, I think, of anyone. I'm not even exaggerating.
Well, so you're stealing my thunder here because my first question was basically going to be like, okay, they didn't do a lot. Obviously, they didn't do a lot. They took the guy that everybody figured they would take if he dropped. They didn't trade up. They didn't trade down. They didn't trade out. They didn't do anything crazy. I think we have a clearer picture of what this regime is about now. But I don't know that we would say yet that we have a clear picture. How much do you feel like after the last week we have that much better of an idea of what like Leon Rose intends to do than we did a week ago?
I don't think really that much. I think they were kind of, probing and seeing what was available for them, but they had their limits. I mean, I don't know if the assumptions going into this offseason, into free agency specifically, where the Knicks will take the patient approach and they'll try to upgrade when they can if the price is right, but don't want to like cash out their trove of assets. I mean, I think that assumption kind of still holds, right? I think just we got to see it play out in real time. And I don't know. You tell me what you think, but like I feel like they're kind of what we thought that they would do. I guess there was the dalliance with like Gordon Hayward, but it feels like if it ended up like, let's say if it worked out and it was like a 2-year deal, like a 2-year deal is fine. That's really not crippling, and it's not a big swerve in terms of like what your development is for your organization. Like if it turned out to be a 4-year deal, then I'd be like, okay, what's going on here? Yeah,
but that's the thing is like, you've only been covering this team for a few years, but you do know the history. And it's like, the one thing I could say is I have been in the mindset of like, okay, here's the thing that I expect them to do because it is the logical thing. It is the sane thing. It is the normal thing. And I don't know, maybe this is revisionist history. I don't feel like they've ever really done that. And I feel like that's what they did.
I don't think that's true. And that was kind of like what I was not struggling with, but I mean, just trying to understand this. If you remember, if you look back at the summer of 2017 when they signed Tim Hardaway, right?
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, that actually hasn't quite aged into a really bad contract. I think it was bad at the time.
No.
But the way that Tim Hardaway played in Dallas, where he kind of found his level, it made a lot more sense. But that was kind of like, okay, what's going on here with the new regime? 2018, they really didn't do anything. Like they did something kind of similar to this, really. They made a few signings on the margin, said we're going to take the slow and steady approach, and we're going to take. But they didn't
have the option then. Like they didn't have any cap space in 2018.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, my counter to that would be is like, I think everyone looks at cap space as like, here's cap space, we have it or we don't. I think what we should really think about cap space in the NBA now is you can have cap space if you want it. It just might cost something. We saw the Pistons pay for cap space, right? Like they created cap space when they didn't need to make, like that Jeremy Grant signing. They let Christian Wood walk. Yeah. I think they spent 4 second-round picks to trade away Luke Kennard and his salary to make all their like big man signings work.
Is that the low-key most astounding thing any team has done this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, no one's talking about that. I mean, I don't think I would trade 4 picks to get rid of Luke Kennard when Luke Kennard's a good player. I'd rather have him than Isaiah Stewart, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, like the Hornets opened up cap space by taking a $9 million hit from Nicholas Batum's contract, right? Like you can open up cap space. The Knicks just chose not to, and they proceeded slowly and then kind of like took what was in front of them type of thing. And the same thing they did this offseason.
I'm trying to think what would have been and I hate using this term because it's, of connotations, but like what would have been the Knicksiest thing to do in this particular offseason, given everything that we saw? Probably Hayward,
give Gordon Hayward $120 million.
That's up there, right? So they didn't do that. They certainly did not do that. By the way, I have to look up the definition of trove. I'm not sure that I would say the Knicks have an asset trove.
I think they have a pretty good. I mean, they have 5 first-round picks over the next 3 years. They now have like, I have it somewhere, but they have like what?
Oh, it's
7 or 8 second-round picks. Hold up, 1, 2.
Well, they have
3.
5 in 23 because they have their own plus 4 more.
They have 9 picks over the next second-round picks over the next 5 years.
Okay,
and
that sounds right.
They have and 7 first-round picks over the next 5 years. So that's not nothing. I mean, that's like 14 total picks when you out of usually 10 is the norm. So they have something to move with, and like as we saw, use those second-round picks not necessarily to make picks, but if you want to clear $5 million off of your salary cap to sign someone else, right? As Utah did, like those things can, are essentially money to spend as well when you're trying to figure out who can you sign and who can you get. So I'd say they're in a pretty good position in terms of picks and assets that way.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. They're in a good spot. I just like when you look at the arsenal that Sam Presti has built up in Oklahoma City, and I guess
Sam Presti, like that dude just has like he's got the infinity gauntlet of draft picks. Like you can't compare to him.
No, you can't. Although David Griffin
Presti can snap
close.
his fingers and like he's got half the draft picks in the world.
That's that's low key the most. Maybe it's not low key. I was going to say the most fascinating situation in the league over the next couple of years. Like, does he make a move or something? Like, I don't. we'll see.
And he's kind of did like he spent, I think, 2 picks this year to move up to get Poku at 17, right? So
he did.
It's going to be interesting to see how they spend it, whether they keep trying to take moonshots, by trading up in the draft because they can, or whether they just kind of use it at times where they feel like they have kind of undervalued assets they can strike at.
So other than them and other than, I would say, New Orleans, the Knicks have, probably the third best asset trove, at least in terms of picks. And they have now some interesting young players. I think Obi Toppin's interesting. We talk about him in a sec. So given where they're at, I think they did the smart, responsible, safe thing. Do you think that this portends to like what this season is going to be in New York? Like it is, like right now it appears, I mean, the odds makers said their bit. What are the 22 wins, I think, is the over under.
Yeah, that's the one I saw. That's the only one I saw.
It's the only one I saw. Which again, just to be clear, fine with me. And we could talk about maybe some of the things that they could have done. I don't necessarily know that there is anything that jumps out, but I'm curious to hear. But do you think this is what this is going to be this season? That they're just going to be a bad team who, probably plays young guys, maybe not as much as some fans would like, or do you expect there to be a pivot of some kind between now and, I don't know, the trade deadline?
I mean, I still feel like there's a move to make somewhere there, just because they have so much cap space that they can absorb someone's problem somewhere along the line, right? But yeah, I don't know, unless the Russell Westbrook trade happens, like what is there to this team? What else is there? What can you really do? Even if you sign someone else in free agency, there's not really anyone out there that'll change like the face of this team that much.
No, to me, I'm looking at 3 things. I'm looking at, is there a cap dump that the only cap dump that to me that is obvious, and again, maybe something I don't. The Hayward thing is that official that he just they've stretched Batum, or is that still? Because I haven't. If it's been reported that that's official and that's done, I haven't seen it.
I only saw Rick Bonnell of the Charlotte Observer report that's what the Hornets intend to do, and he's kind of he's the voice on that. Maybe they change their mind. Obviously, I don't think the Hayward contract is official, and they decide, wait a second, this seems like a bad idea.
No, I mean, I'm sure. Look, they're going to pay Gordon Hayward $120 million over the next 4 years. I'm just wondering if maybe because what I keep going back to is the Knicks taking on Batum, sending Randall to the Celtics in I guess what would be a 3-way signing trade, and then Hayward goes to. That's like the only obvious salary dump situation that I see that makes sense for the Knicks.
I think actually, if they trade Randall to Charlotte for Batum straight up, that opens up the cap space they need. Charlotte does to sign Hayward. if what I've read about the Hornets cap situation is correct.
No, it's 7 point something. So
Batum's at 27 and Randall's at about 19
and change. So yeah, I guess that would. I didn't even think of that. That's interesting.
So, I mean, yeah, but even that would make them like worse as a basketball team. I know a lot of Knicks fans are unhappy with Julius Randle, but he's still arguably their best player.
He's their most talented player, depending on how quickly Toppin learned. But we'll go there right now. I was going to save this for later. Do you think that that's an issue? Because, I mean, you were in the locker room. I certainly got the sense that Julius Randle kind of he liked being the guy, and he certainly liked, using up a lot of the offense.
Yeah, I mean, he thought it was his team. He was empowered to think it was his team.
They told him, this is your team.
Fizdale came out saying, this is point center Julius Randle. They paid him as much. I think that was the obvious read on that. I don't know what Tom Thibodeau is going to do this year. Obviously things change so quickly year to year, and I think that would be kind of the most audacious move he can make if he decides
to bench him.
Yeah, if he decides to bring him off the bench as your 4. I mean, I think maybe there's an argument to going Toppin Randall as your starting front court, but
oh my goodness,
that's another. It's not a very good argument, but it's as one
your 4-5.
Yeah, as your 4-5, obviously, not as your 3. That 3-4 and a Mitch at the 5. I don't even know how that offense would work.
It wouldn't. Yeah. Well, actually, forget about the offense. How would the defense?
Well, the defense with Toppin and Randall as your 4-5 that's why I'm saying that would just be, probably a clusterfuck defensively.
I think Toppin and Randall on the floor at the same time defensively, whether they're I'm not sure what would be worse, whether they're at the 3-4 or the 4-5. It's not good either way. Yeah, so that's probably not going to happen.
And I mean, that's just, I don't know. You got to think it through. I don't know. Like, you have, Nerlens Noel signed. He played about 13 minutes, I think, in Oklahoma City last year.
Yeah.
We'll see if they give Omari Spellman any time. I doubt if they do, it'll be much. Again, you can see how, like, Kevin Knox would get some minutes at the 4. RJ Barrett, kind of really small ball lineups.
You even going through this, I did the same thing in my newsletter yesterday or whatever it was, that, like, there's just a lot of pieces. And I think not necessarily that it always works out poorly when you have too many, when it's like too much of a game of musical chairs and there's like a whole lot more people than there are chairs. But, like, I have trouble seeing. There's a lot of positivity within the team right now. Like, things are like, there's good juju, it's good, whatever, new coach, the whole thing. To start off the year potentially with a guy like Julius Randle, your most expensive player, I don't know if pouting is Julius Randle a pouter? Can he pout? I feel like he's capable of pouting, right?
I agree with you. I understand what you're saying. Like, if you start off and you go through the whole thing where you start the season, we'll go into training camp, and I'm sure Tom Thibodeau will say the line of, we don't have starters yet. We don't know. We'll see what training, like Fizdale did the same thing.
Yeah, they all said that.
But you can tell, like, who's in contention based on how they do the, the lineups and scrimmages and practices and all that stuff. So I think it would probably, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if issues start arising if Julius Randle doesn't start. Understandably so, actually. That's not what he signed up for.
Yeah, no, totally.
That's not what he's getting paid to do.
I just wonder if the Knicks are existing in a world where they don't view Randall as a long-term piece, which I'm not sure anybody thinks that they should. It's a matter of, like, all right, well, if you rehab his value to a certain point, like, what does that get you? Is anyone ever giving you a first-round pick for Julius Randle? I don't think so. Maybe you, again, have heard differently. Just because of the contract is, like, I don't think it's that great. So that's why I thought of that idea, just to put it out there.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens, right? I don't know. I think, like, the Knicks need help at guard so much that they need, like, I feel like that they should address that.
Well, that was my other idea, is they use their cap space to maybe use one of those future assets now to package with, whether it's Frank or whoever, and try to get a better guard in here now.
Right. And then you ask, okay, who's available? Obviously, there's a few teams, I think, like, I would assume the teams that have a slew of guards are the contending teams, and they probably don't want to move their guards because you need.
There's a team that I have my eye on, and they just spent a lot of money today. I should say we're recording
what happened today. What
Brandon Ingram signed.
Oh,
his
yeah,
max.
That's interesting. I mean, but they also kind of made an investment in Lonzo Ball. Eric Bledsoe, I think, is a starter in the NBA. I guess
so. If
George
Bledsoe's
Hill,
the starter, well, no, George Hill's in. Unless I got this wrong,
did he get traded?
Yeah, George. No, dude, it's insane. George Hill's.
I'm not even apologizing. He's in Oklahoma City now.
He's in Oklahoma City. Steven Adams, on the other hand, is in.
He's in New Orleans.
Why has nobody critiqued that? Like, are we really in a world where paying Steven Adams? What did he make? $13.5 million a year is, like, a good deal. I'm sorry.
No, he got 2 years for 35.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's even worse. It's almost 18 a year.
Oh, yeah, George. I know that the Thunder signed, like, 3 guys to 2-way deals and, like, signed and traded for them to make that deal work. Totally missed. All right, well, George Hill's in OKC.
So, but no, to your point, they still have Bledsoe. They still have Lonzo. They just drafted Kyra Lewis Jr. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker is, like, he's a guy.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with Lonzo Ball is he's got 1 year left on his rookie contract. So a decision is coming either way on him next offseason, right? So, the Pelicans can wait and delay a little bit, obviously, if they want to see him play a 4th year in the NBA and what he is. And I think that would be reasonable with a guy that young and talented. Or they can decide, hey, we're kind of over it. Let's see how we can maximize that roster spot and that player right now. I don't know where they stand on that, obviously, but sure, they need some front court help. They have Steven Adams and Jackson Hayes, and they have Zion Williamson, but I think that they're short in the front court. Other than that, if I recall correctly,
I feel like also after if I was them and I just went through last season where like they're a different team with and without Zion. No, I shouldn't say that. They had moments without Zion. I shouldn't overdo that. But like, Julius Randle, not saying Julius Randle, Zion Williamson, but like if there was a guy in the league who it's like you could kind of plug in and be like, okay, do your best impersonation of that dude. Julius could kind of, fake his way to it.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think if you play him, fewer minutes and give him a lesser responsibility than the Knicks did, and with more help, I think he'd be more efficient. I think he'd be better. We've seen that at different spots in his career.
Yeah. In New Orleans, we saw.
Yeah, like he's like the 95% of players in the NBA or more who are, role dependent, right?
Yeah. I love that term. It's great.
So we'll see. I don't know. There's options. The thing is like there's always something that we didn't foresee that pops up, right? And that's how these trades get made. It's like, oh, this is the obvious trade, and then you see something happen that you didn't think of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like they have to know that they need a better point guard situation. Like their backcourt, Alec Burks is there, and but they didn't really invest in him. They gave him 1 year, $6 million. Austin Rivers has what essentially amounts to 1 year and $3 million. So it's very low investment in all the signings that they made. They obviously need help, and I think if they want to maximize RJ Barrett and Obi Toppin and Julius Randle, they need guard help.
But these are the conversations that we've had over the last 2 years, which is like, where do you toe the line between like, if you suck, that's not helping anybody. I think I think I might be in the minority on this. I think they got better in terms of, I think the guys that they got are more helpful to their particular situation than the guys they got last summer. Like, I think Austin Rivers as like a cog is a good guy. He's not, obviously, if you ask him to go and get you like 20 a night, then that's ridiculous, or play point guard for that matter, because I think people are under the perception that he's a point guard and he's not. But that's neither here nor there. Like Alec Burks is like, he can get you a bucket, so he has that kind of shot creation role, but at the same time, he's not going to sop up a ton of usage unnecessarily and like inefficiently. Noel will be, Mitch light, I guess. So I don't know. I get what they've done, but at the same time, you're right in that if they don't go into the season with a better point guard, unless I'm going to throw this one at you, unless they believe in Dennis Smith Jr. as having turned some kind of a corner, what would you think of the wisdom of that if they actually were of that belief? I
would question where they've found such evidence, I guess.
It's putting it politely.
Even coming off his best season in the second year, that he was in the NBA, I don't think anyone could confidently say that he was like a building block type player. Yeah. I think last year was probably an anomaly. It's just so many weird and like unfortunate things happened to him. You're kind of willing to, at least I am, to kind of give him a mulligan. He was placed in he had personal issues on top of a very difficult team roster situation that everything just seemed to cascade for him. I don't think that was his talent level. So I'm curious to see what he does this season, but I would not be able to confidently say, hey, this is the guy that we think we can rely on to be our starting point guard.
I agree. I think it's fitting that my daughter brought me a dead iPad as we're talking about Dennis Smith Jr. That's very fitting. That's okay. I can podcast and dad at the same time. I'm multi-talented. Anyway, yeah, no, I mean, Elfrid Payton is, boy, I don't think I've ever had so many Knicks fans so upset at me as when I was like, listen, it's Elfrid Payton. It's fine. He's like not terrible, but I also get, the vitriol because I watched him last year. Yeah. So let's turn for a second to Russ. Well, actually, no. Before we get to Russ, is there any deal that you looked at as maybe potentially out there for them that they didn't make that you were like, I wish they kicked the tire, or I wonder if they kicked the tires on that, or I wish they would have gone more aggressive against or for this player or something?
That's a good question. It was kind of an unimpressive class of free agents, but I do feel that with all their space, they should have tried, even if it meant
with the caveat that some guys may not have wanted to come here.
Of course, but I mean, like even just like try to make the team better for next season. Even if it meant overpaying on 1-year deals, kind of like what they did last season,
but with better guys.
Well, just guys that made more sense, really. Not putting together so heavy on the front court. A guard somewhere, and I guess I'd have to put more thought into it. But like,
that's the thing is, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure where. Maybe there's an obvious one that I've missed, but yeah, I don't. That's the thing. It was like after Van Vliet, who maybe even isn't even really a point guard. Where was the like? Could they have gotten Rubio if they had? Do they want Rubio? Like that's an interesting. He's always been an interesting name to me, but again, he's not a shooter. Although he's gotten a little bit better.
I thought Rubio would have been really helpful for them, actually. Like I love Rubio. He's a good point guard who's good defensively, and like over the course of his career, it seems like when he plays, the team is better compared to when he's off. And that's just like a good point guard who can make things happen for you and move things along. And he's a good passer. And like I know he's not a good shooter, but
that's not everything. And
he does so many other things well that you can get. Like it's okay. Like sometimes you can compromise a little bit. Depending on how good the player is.
Yeah, and I think he's good. But again, we don't know, how much that was on the table. And also, I'm not sure I blame them for wanting to hoard assets right now and also seeing what plays out. And it's not done yet. We still have a week to training camp. We'll see what else they do. Let's get to Russ, and then I don't want to keep you for too much longer. Who's the GM in Houston now, or president, whatever he is?
I believe it's Raphael Stone.
Raphael Stone. There you go. So Mike Vorkunov, I am deeming you. I'm deeming you Leon Rose. I'm going to be Raphael Stone. I call you tomorrow and I say, you know what? I don't need this headache. I feel good about Christian Wood. I feel great about Boogie Cousins. I just want to get this guy out of here. You could have him for Julius Randle. Take your pick of Frank Ntilikina or Dennis Smith Jr. And I think that works under the cap, right? That should work under the cap because that's 25. Russ is at 41. So that works under the cap. What say you, sir?
So Julius Randle and Frank Ntilikina,
or Dennis Smith Jr. if that tickles your fancy more.
I mean, if Dennis Smith Jr. is in there instead of Frank,
so that's the thing that makes the difference for you.
I would consider it more so. I don't think I don't know. It's hard. Like his contract is not great. Like if the Knicks just signed Russell Westbrook this offseason to 3 years and $133 million.
Yeah.
You would be like, okay, what is going on here? To like, is this just more of the same?
Exactly. Yeah.
At some point, like, you have to get better as a team, right? You have to be more attractive to players around the league. I think that's the thing we're noticing now is that,
well, nobody wanted to come here because they suck.
Right. No one wants to play for a crappy team, right? So you're basically asking yourself, at what point do you pay a we suck tax, right? And so
I'm sorry.
So it's
Gordon Hayward tax. That is officially, we're going to call that the Gordon Hayward tax.
Yeah. So you're wondering, okay, when does that happen? Right. Are you just going to pay it in free agency to attract, some player here that you wouldn't normally be able to sign? Do you do it earlier than maybe your competitive cycle to get like a guy like Russell Westbrook? And so as long as it doesn't cost you anything for your future other than cap space, onerous as that contract may be, like, it raises the floor on you next season, makes you better. It gets, guys start watching Knicks games a little bit more because Russell Westbrook is playing.
Yeah. But it's also not only about the when do you pay the we suck tax, it's who do you pay the we suck tax for. And I think most Knicks fans, even if they were against the move, would have been able to be like, all right, Chris Paul, I get that. And but even for argument's sake, let's say Chris Paul had one more year on his deal, right? I even think then you could have made a stronger argument for it. With Russ, he's just so divisive of a player. And it's like once Russ is in your organization, then like your organization's about Russ. and like both on and off the floor, I feel like. So I think that has to do with it too. But
yeah,
I was curious where you would come down on it, and you came down about where I figured you would. So
it's a hard one. I mean,
it's not easy. It's not a simple answer, I don't think.
I do like, after seeing the Knicks for the last few years and just other teams around the league, at some point you have to have forward progress, right? And so this just constant like iterative rebuilding cycle that just transitions from one rebuild to another. You do if you're the Nets and you can do it super organically, right? Like they had everyone that contributed to that playoff team in 2 years ago was drafted, signed as a low cost free agent, or they traded, Brook Lopez, right? I think that was a trade. Brook Lopez to the Lakers.
It was Brook.
No, not even. It was a number 27 pick, right? 27 pick.
It was Brook and the pick for D'Lo and Mozgov, if I
right. So everyone that they got was either drafted or like a distressed asset, basically. And they were so good at procuring talent, developing it, finding the right guys, and they were able to build that thing out of rubble. But
yes,
the ability to do that is like very hard, and it doesn't happen very often because, we can mention the Nets as one of the few teams that was able to rebuild out of the rubble, out of nothing, without, hitting on a lottery pick and hitting on a free agent signing somewhere. So
yeah,
it's like, how do you take that next step? I think it's just.
No,
and this is not me advocating 100% for trading for Russell Westbrook. It's just thinking through it.
I always think about like where is your organizational mentality? Not mentality is the wrong word. What's the vibe in your organization like? Because the Nets, they lost however many games, they won, I should say, 20, 21 or however many games. But there was a good vibe. Like Kenny Atkinson had the thing rolling. I'm wondering maybe it comes to mid-season and they make a pivot, but right now I just don't know if they need to, because they got Tibbs. If Tibbs takes this group and he goes out there and they're losing close games and they're playing hard and they're flying around on defense, whatever, and Obi looks good. I think Obi Toppin has a lot to do with this. Let's say RJ looks a little bit better. Even if they're bad, I feel like you can start to see okay, we got another top 6, 7, 8 pick coming in a really good draft. That's why I shy away from doing it. But I'll tell you this, I would feel a lot better about saying that if they had, whether it's Lonzo Ball, just some guard ball handler. Yeah. Let me rephrase that. Some ball handler that I could be okay, I can at least talk myself into that guy being a real guy, for this season.
I agree. And if this season goes semi-normally and there's a trade deadline and we get to the trade deadline part of the season, and you could see a team decide, okay, we're in a position where, whatever, they would decide they really want to make the playoffs this year, or they're a contender and they really want to, acquire someone that could help them in the front court. And they feel like Julius Randle is that guy and he's on an expiring contract and they're willing to maybe part with, a guard who has some promise, and the Knicks buy in on that. Or some other teams well, screw it, man. We're bad. We need to get rid of this contract and we'll attach, this promising guard just to make it happen and take the money off. We can't afford to pay it in a season with no fans. I don't know. Who knows? Right. That's the thing. They have the salary floor they have until the last day of the regular season to get there. Yeah. Not that it really matters if they do or not. So we'll see. I don't know. You're right though, and I totally agree. They need guard help. Unless Dennis Smith Jr. is totally rehabilitated or Frank Ntilikina is able to be consistently aggressive.
That's the key.
They need help. They just need guard help, and they need guard help because that's how you actualize Obi Toppin's potential too, right? And Mitchell Robinson. I liked Elfrid Payton last year. I thought he was better than it seemed. And it's look, his 3-point shooting was scary. And that number is just frightening at 20.9%.
I know he made 14 3-pointers. That's the number that I will always remember.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Starting point guard in the NBA made 14 3-pointers.
There's no excuses there. It was just really bad. But even that, he wasn't that bad of a 3-point shooter his entire career.
No.
So I don't know. We'll see. I have questions too about how they'll do their rotation, just because does Kevin Knox get lost this year? Do they get rid of Reggie Bullock? Like, what's the deal?
I could see them just sitting Reggie Bullock on the bench, because I wrote this the other day. I feel like if there was a trade to be had where somebody wanted him and was willing to give something up for him, I think they would have done it like this week, but who knows? So we'll see. I agree with everything you're saying. I don't know where that guard is that they get. I personally think, and I'm curious what you think, and I'll let you get out of here. I think they hope that they will be in the running the next time a disgruntled, we always hear this term, right? Disgruntled star, disgruntled young player, whatever. I think they think that they are going to be in the pole position once that guy emerges. And if recent history of the NBA is any indication, someone is going to be like, get me the F out of here, wherever they are. That's what I think that they are hoping, but I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, and I agree. My condition on that is you almost have to separate it, right? So if you try to trade for a star who's got 1 year remaining, right? Anthony Davis was I think the most recent example. I may be forgetting someone, right? But when you've got 1 year remaining, you're basically in free agency. Yeah. You're trading for someone who has to want to go there. Otherwise, you're going to be giving up a lot of some things for a guy who leaves in a year. Okay, so you have to be in a situation as a franchise where like somebody will want to go to New York, and like that means you're probably close to being competitive or at least being a playoff team, right? So that they can go to a situation where they can win, right? If it's a guy with multiple years left on his contract, I think that's a little bit different, where if he wants out, but he has less leverage if you trade for him, what's he going to do? Sit out 2 years, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like not even just who's the next angry star who wants out. It's like, okay, he's probably got to have like multiple years left on his deal too.
Can I give you my sneaky one?
Go ahead.
What do you think about Mr. Young in Atlanta? Because he was not happy there last year.
Yeah. Was he not happy, or were there people not happy with him?
Well, does it matter?
It depends, because you can get rid of some of those people.
Yes, but they went out. So my read on what they just did this week is like, again, we talked about Gallinari whenever it was at the beginning of last season, a million years ago. And you were like, I'd bring Gallinari in for 2 years at like the right number. Well, 3 years, $60 million is like, hey, now. It's like they went out and they really made a point to be like, we're going to get better right now. And I feel like you don't do that unless you have a young star who has at least made his feelings known about like, hey, enough of the bullshit here. Now, would that mean you would want to come to New York? It's even worse. I don't, but again, let's say Toppin goes out there. See, that's why I think like all this stuff is tied together, because Toppin has to look good and like RJ Barrett has to look good. Mitchell Robinson has to look good, but that's the guy that I have in mind.
Yeah. I mean, I could see, I think that's a complicated case where I would guess some of that is probably coming from ownership too.
Maybe.
And that's a GM in his third year.
Schlenk took,
he's taken,
because his first big move was the Doncic trade. So yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's taken a few big risks, including trading away Luka Doncic. And he
hearing those words, trading away Luka Doncic.
He took a big swing in the draft last season too, by trading up for DeAndre Hunter.
Who's now, I guess, going to be coming off the bench and playing 15 minutes a game.
Right. And so, I mean, he's been aggressive, and I think they saw a regression last year when they, last season. And so they want to take a step forward, and like, they're going to get better. And the East is, I think, pretty top heavy. I would say like the top 7 teams, you probably know who the top 7 playoff spots are. And so that leaves a free for all for the 8 seed.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably in play there too. But yeah, I don't know who that next person could be. It could be Trae Young. Maybe just, maybe he's at it. Nothing surprises me at all if a player decides he wants out. I do want to ask you something,
please,
because we DM'd about this. I don't think I responded to you just because I forgot.
Oh yeah, what did I?
I want you to support your belief here that halfway into the season, Obi Toppin will be a capital A asset.
I stand by
because
that.
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that? He's going to be like.
Well, what is a capital? I mean,
I think he's going to.
He fell. Go ahead.
No, here's what I mean by that, and my thought process I don't think always translates into how I write because I finish these things at like 2 a.m. I don't think, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. Like, I don't think RJ Barrett is a big time asset right now. Like, I don't think any team in the league or any GM would look at him and be like, oh, GM of mystical team X who has young star, right? That maybe asks to be traded. And they're like, okay, I need to get something back that like I could bank on, right? Like that's a bankable, like I know I'm getting a guy who's going to be like a future, like something. I don't think anybody looks at RJ Barrett after last season and is like, okay, he could be that guy. And Mitchell Robinson, I think he has a very high ceiling. I'm very high on Mitchell Robinson. But just by virtue of the position he plays and like the things that he doesn't do, I don't think he's that. I think Toppin could be a guy that some GM could talk himself into being like, okay, if I have to trade my young star, at least I know I'm getting back something that like I could go to my owner and be like, well, look, we lost whatever, but we're getting a guy who's going to give us an efficient 20 and 10 and highlight real dunks and, bring some excitement. Like that's what I meant by that.
I don't know. I just think he went 8th in this draft, which wasn't like a super strong draft, right? I think,
why did he go 8th?
But I think part of the expectation is like, okay, you might see him score and be productive right away because of his age and the fact that he's more advanced physically because he is 22. But if that's all baked in and he still goes 8th, that's kind of what the league is saying about him too, is right. Like at 22, you're getting a big man. And I forget, I saw this on Twitter and I don't want to like not credit the person who said it, but they made a good point. It's in the NBA now, you can get away with having a guard who's not good defensively.
This is someone at the Strickland, I think, said this. Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. So you can get away with that. But you can't get away with a big man who's not good defensively. That really hurts your team then if that's what, Obi Toppin is, and he's not that good defensively and he's not a rim protector. Then he still is what was expected to be. And if he becomes a guy who comes out, scoring 18 points a game or whatever and getting 10 rebounds, it's like we've seen John Collins like the Hawks that want to invest max in him in an extension.
I think their bet is that he's going to be so good. It's a twofold bet is my guess. That he's going to be so good offensively, it's going to make people like Zion last year. I'm not saying Obi Toppin's going to come out and be an offensive player the likes of Zion Williamson, but like Zion Williamson was terrible on defense last year. He's still on. Let me rephrase that. If he didn't have the health concerns, he would still be a top 5 asset or top 10 asset at the very least for everybody in the NBA, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, but there's a bit of a difference there.
No, there is a bit of a difference.
He also projected to be a good defender coming into the league.
Zion?
Yeah, I think so. Like as a small ball of 4 or 5 with his athleticism and his I think we all saw him in the way that he was able to get out to the perimeter to defend and block shots at Duke.
Sure.
There's some. I think some belief that he could do that in the NBA as well. Not to mention that he was 3 years older as a rookie, right? Like, so that room for growth is important too.
It is, and I completely agree with that. The second part of what I was going to say is I think that I should say hope. I think /hope that they would not have taken him if they did not believe that they could, whatever defensive system they're going to run, and I have an inkling as to what it might be, but I'm not sure. I think they could hide him on defense to the point where it's not like obvious. So yeah, we'll see. You might be right. I may be being a little Pollyannic here. But listen, guys like Alan Sepinwall need me to be a little Pollyanna-ish, to offset all of the negativity.
I think Sepinwall is just on tank mode here.
His this season was made for separate. I want to see his catalog of gifts. I I want to see a different one every game. I don't want to see the same tank twice.
Yeah, his GIFs per game average is going to be very high. It was very high during 2018-19. I think it may be even higher this year.
He should break. Yeah, he should be. It's like Russell Westbrook's usage during his MVP seaing. He's gonna have like a 40 usage rate for. They
should just set it in Vegas, and then we should be able to bet on how many GIFs he sends this season.
I'm gonna have to send this clip to him. All right, I think that anything else we didn't cover. The Knicks made a hire today. I should say we're recording this on Tuesday. I don't think we're dropping this until Friday. But the Knicks hired an assistant coach. Ehrman, right?
Darren Ehrman.
Darren Ehrman. Sorry.
Mini Tibbs, according to Rajon Rondo of 2014.
Yeah. So that's fun. A little bit out of left field, right? I thought it was out of left field.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it. I mean, he seems to have a long relationship with Tom Thibodeau. I mean, it's good. It seems like it's a good hire. It seems like they've put together a pretty good coaching staff in place. And I would expect that Darren Ehrman is probably the defensive coordinator of sorts for a defensive coordinator coach.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Who described him? One of your colleagues, I think, described him today as a Tibbs whisperer, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that was Jared Weiss. Yeah, so I mean, Jared knows, he knows him from covering the Celtics in the Maine Red Claws. So I'll take whatever he says, and I'll just co-opt it.
But other than that, anything else we didn't cover? I think that's. You want to give me an over-under? What's your over-under? 72 games, so...
I was trying to do this in my head. I would say with the roster right now, giving like a Tibbs bump for just them being well-coached. I don't know. What's like a 26-win pace? That's about 23 wins, right? It's like right where Vegas has it.
So you want a normal 26-win pace. That's
okay. It's
about
23 wins.
Times 72. That would be 22.8 wins. So yeah.
I mean, Vegas is pretty good at this thing.
I mean, I was writing for a betting site for a little while back, and I did some research on like teams that were picked to have like under a certain amount of wins entering the season. Mm-hmm. And like, I forget if it was like 70 or 75% of those, like they got the over. Like, so, yeah. Okay. So if a team is picked to be like the worst team in the league or like just have a particularly dreadful record, hit the over. History says hit the over. So,
all right. Yeah, I'll hit the over. We'll see. Yeah. I mean, if the over under is at 22.5 and they win 25 games, that's hitting the over. You get your money. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to look at that roster and have very large expectations. I think Thibodeau is definitely a good coach who will maximize them every night. I just don't know even how much that'll carry him.
I would bet the over right now because I think that there is a not insignificant chance that they go out and get someone that makes them a little bit better.
Best case scenario, they bank enough losses where they place very high in the lottery and then get someone in midseason that actually is going to help the guys develop.
That would be fun. I would co-sign for that in a heartbeat. So only a matter of time until we start researching these 2021 kids. I saw Sam I have it up on one of my tabs. I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet.
I'm not going to dive in yet. Who knows?
You're holding off.
Well, I mean, like, who knows when the 21 draft will be? College basketball is having a hard time getting their season going. We'll see what luck the NBA has with getting their season going. Starting an indoor sport league in the middle of the worst the pandemic has been in the middle of winter is, it's a decision.
That's it. That's the question I wanted to ask you. We're going to end with this. Give me the over under on the amount of games Michael Vorkunov covers at, let's just keep it to MSG, Madison Square Garden this year. So out of a possible 36.
Man, I've been actually thinking about that. I don't know. It's over under. I guess I would set it at, I don't know, 18 and a half. I don't even know. I've been looking at what the NFL guys.
I'll take the under.
Yeah. I mean, the other part is it's like, what do you get from going to a game? You don't talk to people in person. essentially get the same access.
What do we usually get? We get the locker rooms out. That's done.
Locker rooms out. You can't be on the court before the game talking to people who are there.
No.
I would very much presume that they will not let us do that.
It's not like you're getting a better view.
I don't even know that we're going to be for sure allowed into arenas yet. Like the NBA hasn't said anything. So I don't know. I mean, even I think from what I understood about like baseball, I don't think the beat writers went to every game, and that was for outdoor stadiums. So I don't know. I don't. It's just kind of weighing risk versus reward on that type of situation.
Yeah, and then you have a small child at home. I have a small child. I have a pregnant wife. I said I'm soon to have 2 small children at home. It's like,
I mean, listen, pregnant people are high risk. I mean, incurring that type of risk for yourself to cover a basketball game and potentially endangering families.
My wife is mad when I go to the super. I'm like, hey, honey, I'm gonna go make a beer run. I need beer.
Right.
She's like, do you really need to go out of the house? I'm like, can we get a?
I'll text you about an app that delivers beer for you. I'll let you.
You had told me about this.
I will not name drop on the podcast because I don't get paid by them, so they don't get that on here. But I will text you the name.
Please do. That sounds great. Although I did ask for a renewal to my beer of the month membership club for my wife. That's the only thing I wanted for Christmas. So
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so that'll be in the offering, but I'll still take the information. Mike Vorkunov, if there's anyone listening who does not know where to find your writing, I feel bad for that person, but just in case they are out there, can you let the folks at home know, what's going on with you?
Yeah, I mean, go to The Athletic, theathletic.com. I cover the Knicks for them. You can find every NBA team, I think, on there, NHL. We cover the league at large, cover some EPL soccer, European soccer, if you're into that, and avoid my tweets on Twitter.
Avoid your tweets?
Avoid my tweets. Twitter's a cesspool. Just let's stay out of there.
I wish I could vehemently disagree. But I will not. I'll vehemently disagree about the Hawkeye thing, and I'm really going to try to give this a little bit more thought.
Here, when this podcast drops, just promise me this. When this podcast drops, maybe you can tweet out a link and along with it include a poll. Is Hawkeye the worst Avenger?
No context, just that's
it. Is Hawkeye the worst Avenger? Let the people decide.
I think I'm actually going to do it right now.
Yeah, do it right now.
Because why not? Mike Vorkunov, you are the best. Everybody, if you're not subscribed to The Athletic, I don't know what you're doing. It's the best sports subscription money could buy, and I say that as someone who has a paid sports subscription.
Well, I hope everyone's subscribing to you too, obviously. Well, not at the cost of The Athletic, but as well.
I appreciate it. How about this? Everybody subscribe to both. There you go.
No, but honestly, just. If you can, and this is a very difficult time, and so I understand that, but and I've tried to do the same. If you can, support the media that you enjoy and that you read, and that gives you some, cultural sustenance to your everyday life. Whether that's the local newspaper, whether that's Jonathan, The Athletic, pay the people that give you the things that you want.
If ever there was a time to appreciate the media, I will say it is in the year of our Lord 2020. So yes, go support the people that do this work. Okay, Mike, you're the best. I'm going to sign off, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back with you with another episode very